Welcome into episode 383 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Before we get into any of the games out west, I want to congratulate Bridget, Scott, and every Boston Bruins fan out there who waited up until the latest hours at night to watch the conclusions of all of these games in the road trips, some worse than others. But we, as a fan base and an analyst crew, get to hold off on these 10 p.m. starts until the Bruins go on their California road trip, which is at the end of March. So we get back onto these regularly scheduled programming. No more of these late nights. Thank God.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go with a punchline at the end there. That was, congratulations to everyone who stayed up and watched them lose in overtime, because it was like, okay, I don't know. I'm sure this was the majority of people going, no overtime, just no, let's not. And then it happened because I was already so tired. But and then you watch it and your team goes from probably performing well enough to have gotten a regulation win to losing in overtime. So
yeah, they definitely performed well enough to win in regulation. And that, I think originally we are going to go Bridget's opening shift first, but this actually goes right into mine, because I think one of the biggest reasons that they didn't win in regulation was Jeremy Swayman, who was not good enough and continues to, in my opinion, not be good enough in general this season. Bruins dominated the first period, got up 2-0. Second period, yeah, like of course the Oilers are making a push. They weren't happy with their first period. Thought the Bruins were doing enough to withstand that push. Got some big blocks from some defensemen. Carlo, McAvoy, even forwards Johnny Beecher had a big one in there. And then Swayman gets beat on a shot that just can't go in on an NHL goalie. Zach Hyman from outside the right dot over by the boards. No screen, no deflection, not a snipe. Just beats him 5-hole. And Brian, I saw you tweet that, it felt like the game changed there. I agree. The Bruins, to their credit, did not collapse after that. In fact, they thought they responded quite well in the third period, and played what I thought was a really solid third period on the road to try to close out a 1-goal game until a couple of mistakes end up leading to Connor McDavid's tying goal. And want to make that clear. Yes, there were mistakes leading up to it. Bad change, lost battle in the neutral zone. I think Zadorov kind of got hung out to dry by the bad change, but still probably overcommits a little too much to Hyman, which gives McDavid too much space. And yet, even after all that, Swayman had a chance to make a save and pick up a defense that I think had made his job very easy most of the night. And he couldn't. He gave McDavid 5-hole, and McDavid beat him and squeaks through to tie the game. So, it just, I wrote a column about this for weei.com for Friday morning. There's a lot of numbers in there. I'm sure, we'll get to some of them. I won't go over all of them off my opening shift, but he continues to just not make enough of the kind of bailout, pick-me-up saves that you need an elite goalie to make. And yeah, he made a few good saves in the third period for sure. I don't want to act like he didn't make any good saves. But when you really needed it there, right at the end, not able to make it. So, I really liked the Bruins game overall and felt like they deserved 2 points, and they didn't get it. And I feel like Swayman is a pretty big reason why.
Yeah, no, I will get back to, some of the stats certainly later. We were going to start with my opening shift first because it's about something that happened before the game started, and that was Tyler Johnson was put on unconditional waivers by the Bruins, and so we kind of expected this would be the first move to make if they wanted to make a roster move that involved getting someone off the roster. Johnson had been healthy scratched. What did you say it was, like 7 of the last 8 games? It was a lot. He wasn't able to come and do or add the value that the team brought him in for. And obviously you can't do that when you're sitting, but still in practices, like you and I have been to plenty of practices, like you more so, but like in training camp and in just watching him at certain times, like even in practice, I feel like he wasn't really making a huge case for himself. And then so he gets waived, and that opens the door for Wahlstrom to come in, who the Bruins picked up on waivers a few days before he gets his season debut or his career debut with Boston. And he's wearing number 71, guys. And I was at the first time I saw him on the ice, I was like, Taylor Hall, what? Taylor Hall's back.
Yeah, it reunites the Bruins' best third line of the last several years. 13, 11, and 71. They're back together. It's a magic combination of numbers.
I was like, this has just kind of made me sad a little bit because I liked Taylor Hall, and I was like, okay, there's another 71 in town, I guess. But so Wahlstrom comes in. I want to get you guys' first impressions. We could do that now, or we could wait till after Brian's opening shift. But yeah, impressions on the Johnson being waived and Wahlstrom's first night with Boston.
Yeah, I'll just give I know we'll get into it more. My quick impressions: Johnson, kind of saw it coming. I mentioned on the last pod, like if you're gonna move on from any forward, like he was the obvious one. And Wahlstrom, I liked his game. I liked a lot of what he brought. I thought that line looked good. Was impressed with his defensive effort in addition to trying to make things happen offensively. So yeah, I'll just leave it there for now. But I liked what I saw.
I'll give mine opening shift first, Bridget, quickly, and then I'll jump right into the Wahlstrom thing. But before I get into my opening shift, just quickly, because you guys mentioned Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno were on the What Chaos show podcast, our friends DJ Bean and Pete Blackburn, and they actually spent a significant chunk of that interview talking about their time in Boston together and some funny stories regarding they had a trip out to Vegas, Arizona, and Vegas, and I think they spent a night out, and it didn't end until the following morning with a trip to Denny's. They talked about celebrating in Florida after Bergeron's 1,000th point. They reflected a couple of years removed from their playoff bounce against the Panthers, which obviously I don't think Bruins fans are wanting to chomp at the bit to hear about, but it is interesting to hear. So there was some good conversation there. So when you're done listening to the Skate podcast, that would definitely be a good listen. My opening shift, as I mentioned, is the road trip in general got off to such a dismal start. You got outscored, what was it, 13-1, 8-1 to the Jets. Was it 5-1 to Seattle?
13-2, yeah.
13-2, thank you. And then you're looking at going into Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton, which is, I don't want to say a huge gauntlet as it pertains to competition. They're all good teams, some a little bit better than others, but a big challenge. And the Bruins put themselves in a position where they could have finished that road trip after starting 0-2, and they could have gone 3-2 on it had it not been for some of the things we'll get into here. But they do finish the road trip 2-1. So, Bridget, Scott, would you say that, given the way that it started, that the road trip was a success, or do you forget how it started and just look at it from a bird's eye view and say 2-1, success or no?
Yeah, I'm so conflicted because obviously they played way better the last 3 games and just in general got their game on track, and so that's encouraging. And yeah, like all things can, like, this road trip could have been an absolute disaster given the way it started. So you avoided that and you ended with some success. It's hard for me to like really feel good about it because you should have won Thursday night. You should have won that game. It was right there, and if you do, Now you're talking about 3 straight wins and finishing it off by beating one of the best teams in the NHL. Like, you would feel great about that. Now, like, how the road trip started would just be completely irrelevant. And because you let Thursday slip away and only get a point, it's like I kind of just have mixed feelings. Like, just like sort of a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I like the way they're playing, So that's, I guess, the overarching point is these last 3 games they're playing good hockey and they're playing, much closer to how they were before the Winnipeg and Seattle games. But I still can't bring myself to like really feel that good about letting Thursday slip away.
Yeah, I guess my answer kind of has. I'm going to pick like a few small things that I think were positive that make me think it was a success because it obviously ended much better than it started. And there was a certain resilience and bounce back that they had that they didn't have earlier in the season after bad games. So I will say some of the individual play is very encouraging. And first and foremost, Elias Lindholm. I would say like he scored again against Edmonton, and he is looking more passionate, I guess would be a word I would use. Like he just looks more locked in. The goal that he scored in Edmonton wasn't like the nicest goal, but it goes in. He seems to be on the right path to contributing more frequently. And that's big because you need your top 6 to be scoring for you. So I think that was encouraging. But just the overall team effort was also encouraging the last few games. Defensively, they were much better than obviously the Winnipeg game, which was hopefully the worst loss of the season because it was the worst goals against of Swayman's career. I think goaltending is still a question mark, but like obviously this is a whole team we're talking about, and there was steps taken in the right direction, and Castlick continued to be an energizer and help with transition and score. And I don't know, there was plenty of encouraging things in the last 3 games that you can come out of it saying, I know really it at the end of the day is even 2-2-1, but you're on the right side of that where you're on the 2-0-1 side of that. So that's good news, and they're coming back home. It feels like they've been gone forever. I swear, it's like it feels like it's been a year since they were at the Garden.
Was it 12 days on the road?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, that's why I said off the top, it's been fucking with my sleeping pattern. So I'm glad that they're finally done with it. But Bridget, you laid things out beautifully. I think that's exactly where I wanted to go with it too. I think it's easy to look at the road trip and say 2-2-1, average, right? But as Scott said, the way it started, it could have been a disaster. And I think that's the only way you can look at this road trip is you have to kind of look at it piece by piece because yeah, you wish that they showed up for those first 2 games, but they didn't. Okay, so then how much worse can it get? It can get a lot worse. And they did just about everything in their power to kind of reverse that mojo a little bit. And in doing so, Bridget, as you mentioned, a lot of individuals showed some encouraging signs. You hit Elias Lindholm perfectly. He looks a lot more dangerous. David Pastrnak ends the game in Calgary. He looked dangerous like in these last few games. The fourth line scoring in 3 consecutive games. Obviously, there was a bit of a different mix in the Edmonton game because Oliver Wahlstrom got into the lineup. So that fourth line then became Castlick, McLaughlin, and Beecher, which I think was the right move. You reward McLaughlin for his recent play. And it's not a big deal to put Koepke on the 9th floor and observe for a little bit. So I like that move by Sacco too. And that third line, I thought Oliver Wahlstrom was the best player on that line last night. He was noticeably physical. He had a good stick. He was making things happen in and around the net, creating opportunities for his line mates. I thought Coyle and Frederick both were recipients of some good battle work and puck retrievals from Oliver Wahlstrom, and then the puck kind of died on their sticks. So again, that's just a matter of executing better from Coyle and Frederick's perspective. But I thought Wahlstrom was very good on that line. A little bit bigger than I anticipated, more physical than I anticipated. And what we all heard about was his hands and his shot. So when you're seeing his physicality and his defensive awareness as the best things in his first game, that's a good sign. So so far that's a good pickup for the Bruins. And yes, just the overall competitiveness from the team and attention to detail and defensive awareness and commitment to defense, blocking shots, getting in lanes, closing off, checking with your feet. I thought in Edmonton in particular was really solid. Thought in Vancouver it was good too. And then in Calgary it was kind of Mets and Mets. But I would say I feel better about this team than I did a week ago because they were able to claw back, get 2 wins, should have been 3 as we've noted. And in doing so, I think that their team game, and Scott, you wrote about this the other day as well, which is just their high danger chances for and against. Like their team game is coming together. And so I'm going to choose right now to hang my hat on the last 3 games, despite the unfortunate outcome last night, where, in my opinion, the better team didn't get the 2 points.
Yeah, speaking of high danger chances, that Frederick Coyle Wahlstrom line, when they were on the ice, high dangers were 6-0 Bruins for the game. Just looking it up, Wahlstrom he played under 9 minutes. Felt like a little more than that, but obviously they're easing him in his first game. I did notice, a couple shifts where it looked like they skipped him. And there wasn't much special teams time in this game in general. Obviously he's not going to be used on the penalty kill. He got 30 seconds of power play time on the second unit. So obviously not really much of a chance to get super involved there. But yeah, I really liked his effort all over the ice. The back checking and like getting in deep in the defensive zone to break up a couple plays. Like, I'll be honest, like I didn't really know he had that in his game, and we'll see if it continues or if that's just a, first game with a new team, the team you grew up rooting for kind of boost. Hopefully it stays, because if it does, then I think he's going to be a really solid player for this team. But yeah, you mentioned the article I wrote about high danger chances. Like last night was a huge test, and they come out of it leading the Oilers in high dangers 12-9 for the game. And at the end of regulation, the Oilers had 24 shots on goal and 7 high danger chances, which would have been their second in both categories, their second fewest in any game this season. So yeah, when the Bruins are on their game, when they're focused, which still needs to happen more consistently, like they are clearly a team that can lock in defensively and take away inside ice. Like they are now making a very good habit of doing that. And they're also creating some more offensively. They need better finishing. They need Swayman to stop more of the high danger chances they do give up. But yeah, it's a great foundation to have. And there's been, I would say, noticeable improvement in both areas since Sacco took over.
Yeah. The goaltending thing is very puzzling to me. I wish I had we need Razor on again. I think I say this all the time. We need Razor to come back on because we're not with him until February. Sunday skate doesn't start again until February. It's too long.
I think I would be arguing with Razor on this one.
I think so too, because I think that he, and this is because of who he is and how his whole career it was, like he's going to defend the goalie more than probably we would, and that's what normally happens. But like, I just want him to like explain what the heck is going on. Like,
can I tell you what he would say? Because I think I know what he would say to you, Bridget. I think what he would say is Jeremy is going through the biggest game volume in his NHL career to this point, and it's a long NHL season when things aren't going right, and it's all and when things aren't going right and you're constantly playing and you're getting back into the net, you don't have time to rectify in your mind what's going wrong. You're battling confidence and there's not enough time. That's what he would be saying. And so to that, I would say, I think we would all probably say, then why is he getting this volume of game of a workload when his play? I mean, if you look at his, I mean, it's actually it's a lot. I didn't realize just how much separation he has from Korpisalo in games played this year. I mean, Swayman started 24 games and Korpisalo has started just 11. Now, Swayman's goals against are 3.13. Korpisalo's are 2.56. Swayman's save percentage is 0.887 and Korpisalo's is 0.901. Now, granted, he has more than double the starts of Korpisalo, so more opportunity for numbers to plummet, but also more opportunity for numbers to be better. I think we all know Razor would probably take a player's perspective and say it's a long season and that Swayman's going through after a long summer. There's probably a lot going on between his ears and not a lot of time in between starts to fix whatever's going on. It's probably a confidence thing right now, but okay. Where does that get you last night in the second period?
Yeah. And like, this ties into something else that like I wrote about this a while ago. This was like a month ago, but I would still stand by it now. Like, I don't really know why they insist on giving Swayman 3 or 4 starts in a row every time through. Like, what is wrong with going 2-1, 2-1, 2-1? That feels like a pretty good rhythm to me, where you're still getting Swayman more games than he's had before, and you're keeping Korpisalo involved with a start a week. Whereas now, instead, like, and credit to Korpisalo, like, by and large, he's still performed well when he's gotten in, but you're asking him to do it after 10, 11 days between starts. And, the numbers, I haven't done an updated look at it, but when I wrote about it, the Swayman's numbers in his third or fourth consecutive start versus first or second start in a run were like way down. Like, there was a noticeable drop off, which would, like, that would obviously support the idea that maybe the workload's getting to him and he's not doing a great job with 3-4 straight starts. So yeah, I would like to see that number balance out a little. I get that, like, they feel like they have to build Swayman up, or they're now paying him like a goalie who should be able to handle it. But it's like, okay, but he's still a guy who has only ever been part of a platoon in the regular season. And I think last spring he showed that he doesn't need to get a bunch of starts in a row to get ready for the playoffs, right? Like, they went platooning the entire way down the stretch. And then Swayman still runs with the number one job and starts every game and looks really good doing it in the playoffs. So I don't think you need to, keep giving him 3-4 straight starts to get him ready for the playoffs. In fact, I think if you can build in some extra rest for him, like, I think that's only beneficial, if and when you get to the playoffs.
Well, that 8-1 loss to Vancouver was the third start in a row for him, I believe.
Winnipeg.
Sorry, Winnipeg.
It's okay. It was a long road trip.
Yeah, and then he comes out, Korpisalo plays, and then he goes back in for Vancouver. But yeah, it's just not what we're used to seeing from him. I think that's why it's so puzzling, because I don't know, just the expectations are high because of what he's been able to do in the past. That's why he got such a good contract. And it's not there right now. But once again, like, he has the ability to get back there. It's just we're kind of waiting to see when that happens. And obviously, if he starts making saves like that, like, your points, you're going to be less of a fringe team. Like, you might start getting into the area where, okay, your goalie is stealing you a few points. Now you're feeling a little bit more comfortable. Maybe you're actually points percentage wise in those top 3 teams in the division, rather than on the bubble in a wild card spot or just hovering around a wild card spot. Like, it could be a big difference. Just picking up an extra point a week or whatever, like, here and there, because your goalie can steal you, something. Or in this case, it wouldn't even have been stealing the point, because your team should have won. So it would have been just keeping pace, like keeping the points that you should have.
So in the last couple of years, I think his starts were 41 and 44, splitting the net with Linus Ullmark. We, heading into the season, said 55 should be, around where he gets for starts. Right now he's at 24. Scott, if you don't mind, if you don't already know off the top of your head, over the next minute or so, do you know what his pace is right now for games starting this year? Because to your point, Bridget, about him getting, hopefully getting out of it at some point, I think when you combine the off season that he had lingering feelings about the arbitration from the year before, with the Bruins telling him how much, he doesn't deserve what he wants. Then you have last off season with the contract issues, and then you have half the fan base or more pissed off at you, and you have all this pressure on you. I just don't think that with the workload that they're giving him right now and the lack of confidence and execution he has to his game, that he's just going to snap out of it if they keep playing him like this. I think they need to do what Scott mentioned a few minutes ago, which is scale it back, even if that's just a 2-1-2-1 type of rotation, because his body is not accustomed to having a 60-game workload in the National Hockey League. And I don't think you go from 44 one year to 60 plus the next year. It's too, when you're battling confidence, it's too much too soon. They need to ease him into this workload that they probably want him to have with this contract. If he was playing lights out, that's one thing, but he's not. And I think that they need to find a bit of a middle ground between his workload with Linus and what they want him to have as a number one goalie making 8+. I think they got to find a better balance. And I think Scott's recommendation is it. I don't know if you found what his pace is for games starting this year, Scott.
Yeah, he's on pace for 58 starts.
Okay, so not crazy away from where we thought then, but it seems like he's getting far more than that. And maybe it's just because when it rains, it pours.
Yeah. And, another thing that, like, I feel like I've heard quite a bit was, and I mentioned it on here, is like, you would hear people say, like, oh, he's turned a corner, especially like since the coaching change, and he's finding his game or whatever. And I kept kind of pushing back on that, where I was like, still feel like he really doesn't look like anything close to himself. And I almost thought I was like on crazy pills, because I'm like, am I missing something that everyone else is seeing? But I think there are numbers to back it up. Like, okay, even if you want to take the Winnipeg game out of it, because, hey, look, 8 goals is going to drag down every single statistic you want to look at. Okay, his other 6 games in December, Bruins are 5-0-1 in those games. So you're like, well, Swayman must be great, right? He has an .897 save percentage in those 6 games. And if you look at expected goals, he has given up more goals than expected in 5 of those 6 games. So, like, again, I think the credit should be going to the Bruins defense and team structure, which I think has noticeably improved. And that it looks that way to my eyes, and the statistics and analytics and all of it back that up. And I feel like it's been team defense lifting up Swayman to allow him to have a, if you add in the Winnipeg game, 5-1-1 record in December now. I still don't really think Swayman has, maybe like slightly turned a corner from where he was earlier in the year, but I still think there are like multiple levels to go for him to get back to the goalie that we've seen him be in the past and that everyone expects him to be.
Well, what bothers me the most about last night, because I want to correct something real quick, because I haven't said this, but I just don't want people to misinterpret what we're saying. I don't think any of us here, and correct me if I'm wrong if I'm speaking for you out of turn, but I don't think any of us here are saying that that he's the reason they lost last night, because
I kind of think that.
Well, I do.
I mean, if I'm ranking the reasons, he's number 1 on my list.
Right, but and I'm with you, but I just want to clarify, like, because there were some, as you said earlier on in the episode, Scott, there were some defensive blunders in front of him on the tying goal and the game-winning goal. So, like, we're not going to hold him accountable solely on those plays. Those are team letdowns, himself included, especially on the tying goal. But the first goal, to me, is inexcusable, and I'm not going to completely blame the loss on Swayman entirely, but I will say the game changed and you opened the door for the result that they got with that first goal. And that first goal, 0% of the time should go in. And Scott, you are on record oftentimes saying that Swayman isn't just supposed to make the saves he's supposed to make. He's supposed to make the saves that most goalies wouldn't make more often than not. And that's what separates elite goalies from good or average. Well, that save wasn't that's under the category of a shot that nobody in the arena is expecting to go in. That's not even a save you're supposed to make. That's like a save that's not automatic. And you're up 2-0, you're playing great. And now it's 2-1. And so whatever happens after that, whether it's Swayman's fault or not, his individual blunder, because his teammates on that play did everything they were supposed to do. Everybody was kept to the outside. The puck does squeak out to Hyman somehow, some way, but again, it's a non-threatening shot essentially on the ice. I thought for sure that in real time that puck went off of McAvoy trying to get back to the front of the net. When I saw the replay and saw it didn't touch anybody, I was floored. And so, yes, the rest of the way there were some team letdowns that allowed the Oilers to eventually win in overtime, but none of those happen if Swayman makes a save he's supposed to make 100 times out of 100, and it opened the door. And that's my frustration with them last night. It's that first goal in particular, because they're up 2-0 and they were playing excellent hockey and they didn't let down after that. It's not like that goal went in and the Bruins just deflated and caved in. They still put a solid game the rest of the way. But sometimes hockey just takes, hockey's hockey, and sometimes shit happens. And when you're playing Connor McDavid, he's going to get his moments. But that first goal, to me, guys, you wonder, how does that game end if he just covers that puck? Is it a 4-0 Bruins win, 4-1, 3-1, like whatever? But I don't think it's a 3-2 Oilers win in overtime. And yes, he did make a great save at the end of the third period, but again, that's well after the play I'm talking about.
I feel like, Brian, you just were like, I want to clarify. I want to say it's not Swayman's fault, and then just like listed why it was Swayman's fault, like for like 2 minutes.
Well, I'm list. There's a difference though, like, and I know it might not sound that, because I'm not always clarify my thoughts, but it's his fault that the Bruins, that game became vulnerable, that game became close, and then from there on out, it's just a hockey game and shit happens. So, like, I guess you could say that it's his fault, but I'm really blaming the fact that I'm blaming him for the door opening. I'm not blaming him for how the game finished. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, and that goal, that first goal, the soft one you're talking about, like, that comes with the loaded up top line of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman on the ice. And it's like, that line needs absolutely zero help. Like, you can't give them anything. Like, that's just not the Bruins mostly did a good enough job against that line. Like, of course they're going to get chances, and the Oilers, as they often do, they load that line up when they're trailing, because they know that no 5-man unit can defend for any length of time a line with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on it. So they take the chance of having their other lines exposed, and they load that line up. And obviously they're going to get chances. They just are. Against any team in the NHL, they're going to get chances. You can't give them extra ones. You can't make mistakes. You can't let a non-chance turn into a goal. So that to me made it even more just deflating, kind of depressing to see. Like, that line's going to get plenty of good chances on their own. You don't need to. You can't be giving them away to that group.
What did you think of the McDavid goal though? Like, what I saw on it was, I mean, Connor McDavid has such an obvious speed advantage over Nikita Zadorov. Knows that, blew by him, got to the crease. So obviously high danger chance he takes it all the way to the net. But I did feel like Swayman could have had that one too. Like, he had the pads down, it just kind of snuck under him, and he tracked him. Like, he was in the right position to make the save, it seemed like, and he didn't make the stop. Obviously it's McDavid, so it's hard to say, yeah, you should have had that one because it's McDavid and he was crashing the net. But
so what I would say to that, Bridget, is, because you're absolutely right, it's exactly how I feel. Swayman could have had that as well. But I would say this is why I was saying I'm not blaming the whole thing on him, because just like Swayman opened the door on that weak goal for Edmonton to come back into the game, I think that Charlie Coyle having the puck on his stick just outside the Bruins' defensive blue line, getting his pocket picked by Draisaitl, and McAvoy going for a change when the puck was still in a neutral zone and clearly not on the other side of the red line. Those plays open the door for McDavid to get the puck back and go to the net and score that goal. So, I look at that play and I say, yeah, Swayman should have potentially had that save, but if Charlie Coyle just gets that puck out of trouble and doesn't hold on to it and has better situational awareness of his surroundings and doesn't take that extra second to get his pocket picked, which you can sit there and say maybe he was hooked, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but it's hockey and we'll play through those things. So that's why I'm saying, I look at that play and he's not the first person I look to on that play because the Bruins had possession of the puck outside the blue line and they turned it over. So similar to him letting the goal in the second period, opening the door, his teammates opened the door for that goal to go in eventually.
I want to make a quick point about Charlie Coyle. I don't know if this is where you're going with this, but he actually did take 10 faceoffs yesterday. We had been talking about how he was only taking one a game. I don't know if it's because Kastelik comes off the line. They have to use him more, but Frederick can also take faceoffs. But we got a comment on our last video, I think, or maybe two ago, that what's going on with Coyle? Why isn't he taking faceoffs? I've seen people tweeting, "Oh, Coyle hasn't won a faceoff since training camp or since preseason, whatever it was." It's like, okay, well, hasn't been taking them, but he took 10, which is still not a super high volume, but that's more back to normal.
Yeah, and Brian, you're right. Obviously, there were kind of multiple mistakes leading up to it. I would throw it. It's really if any one of the three forwards does enough there, where Pastrnak does a good job winning a battle in the D zone, but then kind of overskates the puck in the neutral zone, doesn't really come back to it. Coyle, you mentioned, has it on his stick, loses it. I did think it was a hook. I also think you're not getting that call at that point in the game, so be it. And then Frederick is kind of the third forward coming by, and right after Coyle loses it, Frederick has a chance to make a play, check, whether it's a stick check or a body check, and instead he just kind of does a flyby heading to the bench. It's you can't. Not with 2 minutes left in the game. Yeah, I know you're at the end of a shift. You can't do a flyby. It just can't happen. So yeah, it's just kind of several things leading up to that. And then again, I'll just come back to all that said, had a chance to make the save. The team in front of him picked him up all night, blocking shots, getting in lanes, clearing out the front, doing what they're supposed to do against the most dangerous offensive team in the league. At the end, yeah, it's your turn to bail them out. They screwed up once.
Yeah.
Bail them out. Step up. That's kind of my take.
No, I agree. You guys know I'm not here to give anybody really a pass. I just a lot happens over 60 minutes, and another play that comes to my mind too is when you're up a goal, you're up 2-1 still, and David Pastrnak is all alone. He's all alone in front of the net. I think he freezes Skinner. I think he has a chance to shoot that puck, and he decides to go backwards to Pavel Zacha, and it just doesn't end up working out. And look, Pastrnak's a creative guy. He's got chemistry with Zacha. They do those plays in the past. They work out. It's tough to be a Monday morning quarterback when you're talking about some of the, one of the best creative players in the world. But when you got a 60 goal scorer and the puck's on a stick at the crease, you kind of have a little bit more confidence in his ability to finish that. And, if he's playing with a little bit more confidence right now, he shoots that, maybe it's 3-1. Maybe we're not talking about this tying goal. So there's just, look, if when a team wins a game, you get 3 stars to the game. Okay. So if a team loses a game, if I were ranking the 3 stars, the most important Bruin as to why they lost.
Do we call them stars though? Do we call them?
We can call them. What do you want to call them?
Well, guys, we've been inconsistent about doing like ups and downs, so this can replace the weekly downs.
Swayman, if I'm ranking blame for the Bruins in this game, he is at the top of the list. There's no doubt about that. We all agree there. I guess I'm just trying to illustrate other moments where there was missed opportunity or other chances, so that maybe the moments we're talking about with Swayman, it doesn't get to that. That first goal,
3 strikes.
3 strikes, that works. The reason that first goal annoys me so much is because, unlike the other goals, like the overtime goal, Brad Marchand overskates a loose puck right in the crease. Things happen fast. 3-on-3 is a bit of a gong show, but like if he collects that puck, Ekholm's not all alone. We just spent a few minutes on the game tying goal. So those goals, like there were things that could have been done prior to, was it Swayman's fault or not? The reason that first goal bothers me as much is because his teammates did everything right on that play. Again, how did the puck end up loose to Hyman? Maybe we can go back and watch that, but that's just a matter of shit happens. But again, he's at the boards. It's a non-threatening shot.
Zadorov tried going up the boards. It hit his skate, kind of kicks out a little.
Yeah.
Like it
but his teammates kept him to the outside. Like there's nothing more you can really ask on that play of his teammates other than like breaking the puck out cleanly. But hockey happens fast. That's why that first goal is squarely on Swayman, because I just illustrated it. So yeah, it's a story right now. Like he's been not playing, like he's not one of their best players this year. That much is obvious.
Yeah, he's dead last in the NHL in goals saved above expected, and he's dead last in high danger save percentage. Last 2 years combined, he was top 10 in high danger save percentage. Like again, I'm not expecting him to do anything that he hasn't done before. Like I know like that, I see all the time online, like people saying, oh, he was only a platoon goalie. He's never proven it. They shouldn't have committed to him. And it's like, okay, he was in a platoon. He was also a really good goalie. Like that happened. You don't have to lie to yourself and like pretend that he stunk. Like, no, he was really good basically the entire time he's been up in the NHL. He hasn't been this year. Like that,
he was a hero last playoffs.
Yeah,
like, the conversation was not even close to what it is today. It was like could do no wrong in fans' eyes at the end of last year, and now it's like it kind of is such a short memory of when you were cheering for him in the playoffs and like, oh man, this guy's got our backs, and then it's like, okay, well now we don't even like. They turned on him, and there's a few reasons we've gone over extensively, but yeah.
Well, that's the unfortunate part about how everything played out this summer, because it didn't have to go public the way that it did, and unfortunately, I feel like the player in his camp kind of had that first punch, and people can say the Bruins took him to arbitration for the millionth time. The player took the team to arbitration, and the Bruins could have given him 2 years of his arbitrated contract, and they gave him 1. And then when that moment happened, things got ugly, and it didn't have to. And Swayman can probably learn something from don't air out grievances about a contract negotiation on a podcast in the future, because that's where things started to go south, because it just did. But one thing I wanted to mention, guys. Oh, and the last thing on Swayman, it's not like his body is less capable stopping the puck than 6 months ago. I think it's all between the ears right now. And that to me is like the most worrisome thing, because the NHL schedule it's relentless. It doesn't stop. So he's got to figure out some way to, find a peace of mind and just move on here.
It's certainly not out of, it's not, he's not far off from winning those fans back either. Like
right.
Good play is going to determine how liked you are here. It always has, especially for goalies. There's been times where, goalies, they get the spotlight and then they get the worst of the worst too. So yeah, I feel like we've talked enough about Swayman. If we did really want to do like who's up this week, Elias Lindholm is the most obvious one. Mark McLaughlin had, his two goals in back-to-back games. Down.
Can I give one more up, Bridget? It's a less obvious one, and I don't even know if the stats back this up. So, but it's just the way I feel watching the games lately. I know he was on the ice for the game tying goal, but I don't really fault him as much. I feel like he was kind of put in a shitty position, and I'm talking about Nikita Zadorov. But don't you guys feel like watching him that he looks a little bit more in control? He's settled down a little bit. I'm not saying he's not taking a penalty here and there, or there's not a turnover here and there, but he looks to me like he's a little bit more just controlled. And I think that's all they really want from him, is to be a controlled defensive presence out there that, plays physically. And I just think they're getting closer to what they want from him. I'm not saying it's perfect yet, but he strikes me as somebody who has settled down a little bit. Because, Bridget, you talk about Elias Lindholm looking better and better, and those are two highly scrutinized acquisitions. Lindholm has been looking better, and I feel like so has Zadorov, but in a less obvious way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Zadorov's playing better. I feel like there's still, there's still a couple plays here and there that you're like, okay, that's a bad decision. Again, I think you're just going to have to live with some of that. Like, that's just kind of baked into the Nikita Zadorov experience. It's how he's always been. But if 95% of the time he's doing the right thing, like, that's going to be good. And I think he's getting closer to that. I would also throw out as an up, Morgan Geekie, I think, has been playing really well recently. Like, just very noticeable all over the ice. Making defensive plays, winning battles. His ice time has been up. He's getting chances. He's helping to create chances. I feel like all of us, I mean, like us on this podcast, but also Bruins fans, media in general, like, we all were rightfully talking about how bad of a start he got off to this year. The couple healthy scratches in there. I feel like no one has been talking about the fact that he's been playing better hockey recently. So we probably weren't going to otherwise. So I want to make sure that I do give him some credit, because I think he's looked good for really probably a couple weeks now, but especially these last couple games.
Yeah, these are, besides McLaughlin, like, those three guys are people that had slow starts. And also, like, the first three guys we list, Lindholm, Zadorov, and McLaughlin, were not on the Bruins roster last year. Like, McLaughlin was in the system, but he wasn't on Boston. And then, you needed to see Lindholm start to produce more and play with the intensity that we now know he has in there. And Zadorov has reined it in. I think, like you said, Brian, I think it is less noticeable because when you don't notice him, it's probably because he's doing the right thing. Like, it's not the most eye-grabbing part of the play. It's happening away from the puck most of the time. And then when he does have the puck, like, it's a simple play, right? It's not like a fancy play that you're seeing, but that's what's good about it. And yeah, I think McLaughlin is just obvious because in his sample size here, he's done better and better, I guess you could say, as he's gotten more time. And Scott, are we past the month mark now for the waivers?
So, I don't want to say anything wrong. So I know we're at 9 games, which means if he plays one more, if he plays Saturday, then he definitely would require waivers. What I don't know and haven't been able to get an answer on for the 30 days thing is, there's been a couple times here during this, like, last month where they make paper moves to, like, send him down for a day and then call him back up. And they've done it with Osterley a few times too. I don't know if those count towards, like, do they bank an extra day because he was technically down for the day? Or does the NHL, like, see through that and they're like, no, that still counts as him being up? I don't have the answer. So, like, I'm not. Saturday would be 30 days as well. So I guess the very simple answer is if McLaughlin plays Saturday, he requires waivers. The other thing I would note here is that Thursday night at midnight, the holiday roster freeze went into effect for the next week. So the roster that the Bruins have waking up on Friday morning, that's their roster for the next week until the 27th when it lifts. So no one getting sent down, no Patra call up. So don't be expecting that. You know, when he goes out and scores 2 more goals this weekend or whatever, like, nope, he's not getting called up, at least not until the end of next week.
So, guys, we talked about Swayman. That's an obvious down. I'm just going to mention a couple of others and let you guys run with it. Again, Scott mentioned it earlier. That third line had was it 6-0 in high danger chances for. We're talking about Frederick, Wahlstrom, and Coyle. I thought Wahlstrom was the best player on that line last night. I said that earlier on in the podcast. And I do think that Frederick and Coyle, you know, they're part of that. Like they're part of that territorially. Scott mentioned the Frederick flyby on a game tying goal, Coyle getting his stick lifted. So those weren't great. But overall, I'm gonna have to say that Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick are downs. You know, they both go scoreless on a 5-game road trip. Well, that's not good for middle 6 production. And dating back a little bit further, Charlie Coyle has 1 point in his last 8 games. So, like, you know, we're not going to sit here on this podcast and just look at purely point production and say that's how a player is playing based off of that alone. But you get to a certain point where, okay, I'm glad there's a shift here, shift there, where they're hustling and bustling. But, you know, overall, you can't go scoreless on a 5-game Western road trip, and you can't beat Charlie Coyle. I mean, again, he's got 9 points on the year, so we know he's been struggling, but 1 point in his last 8 games, like, you're mid-season. There's no more excuses of early season rust or whatever. And Frederick, you know, he had 2 goals against Philly, but don't look now, but that was, 6 games ago. So those guys, they have to be downs, and I don't think there should be much dispute there.
Yeah, definitely. And, like, even, just thinking about the way we talk about them, where it's like, oh, they moved Kastelic up to that line, he gave them a boost, or Wahlstrom comes in his first game and gives them a boost. And it's like, Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick shouldn't need the third player on that line giving them a boost. Like, those guys are, at the very least, established NHL third liners. They should be able to carry a line and lift up, give a boost to whoever gets put on their right wing, not the other way around. Like, it shouldn't be the responsibility of that third guy to drive that line. Coyle and Frederick should be driving that line. They aren't on a consistent enough basis right now.
No, I was going to say the same thing. Like, Kastelic was the driver energy-wise. And, I feel like even though he might not be the fastest guy on that line, looked like the fastest guy on that line when he was up with them. And it just played at that kind of intense pace. But it's hard to say that they would be anything besides a down on the road trip, because they've been quiet. They've been they're not noticeable on the score sheet. Like Brian was mentioning the stats, and they're not very noticeable in game. Like, we all take notes the whole game. Like, Pasta is all over my note sheet most nights. And then there's like Frederick and Coyle. I feel like I don't have a whole lot of notes on necessarily, because the memorable plays are not happening with them, like setting it up or things like that. So, and I will say, Pasta could have had another 4-point night in Edmonton. Like, he had a breakaway or 2. Like, he had like 1 full breakaway, 1 partial breakaway. He had that pass that situation where he decided to pass to Zacha instead of shoot it. Well, Zacha could have finished it. That could have been an assist. Like, he could have had another 4-point night like he did the other day. So I don't think he's playing bad. It's just like, it's just not going for him. And he's just, so I would call him an up on the trip, guys. I don't know what you guys think of that. Like, he's generating offense. Like, those were plays he was generating, but just not finishing.
He appears to be trending in my opinion. Like he's trending upwards. I think overall, I think he's like we've talked about last episode. His point pace is not what it was the last couple of years, or just generally throughout his career. But it's much better than what it was, and I think he's trending. I'm not looking at Pasternak right now, saying that he needs to pick it up. I think I actually think I've liked his efforts with and without the puck for the most part. The execution, obviously, for his standards, there's still some to be desired there. But I'm encouraged by his road trip for the most part. I'm encouraged by Lindholm. I'm encouraged by Marchand. Brazeau continues to make plays, even if it's not going in here and there. I was encouraged by Wahlstrom. I'm encouraged by the fourth line. I'm encouraged for the most part heading back to Boston by the defense, a defense that is still without Hampus Lindholm. Yes, they're still lacking a ton of finish throughout the lineup. But for me, it's that third line is what's most worrisome to me, because those guys have to get going. And I also think those guys have trade value. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that want them, Coyle and Frederick, to be explored in a trade market. And there's a lot of Bruins fans that say, guys, there's a lot more value to a team than what you see on the ice. They're well liked in the room. And I don't disagree with that. I think at a certain point, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. Like, you see clips on Bruins Twitter or their TikTok or behind the B of like behind the scenes stuff. And you see just how close all these guys are. You're like, oh, that's right. They are all good friends. And it would suck to see their friends traded. And that's true. But they all know it's a business. And if you're Don Sweeney or Cam Neely, okay, am I going to keep Frederick because everybody loves him? Or do we need somebody who's going to impact our team game to game? So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with that middle six. And I know we talked about a Frederick for Capo Caco potential trade. That's not happening. He goes out to Seattle for probably not the return Rangers fans would have ever hoped for.
Dude, what is Chris Drury doing? Like,
BU guy.
I know it pains me a lot. He's arguably the greatest player in BU history, but I don't know about the Chris Drury GM tenure. Like, he's gotten out of some bad contracts, but seemingly at the expense of any kind of locker room culture, chemistry. Like, that team is now just in free fall. Bad return for Kako, who I know like has been a little bit of a depreciated asset. But really, like, I don't really think much of Will Borgen. So I feel like that's like almost nothing, like very little in return there.
And we had some interactions with Brian. Posted like a poll of like, oh, would you do this trade? And like, if you're a Rangers fan, like comment what you think. Like, I feel like Rangers fans would have rather had the Trent Frederick return than what they actually got. So maybe that was too much of an ask. Like, maybe John Sweeney was like, no, that's too much. Like, or whatever happened. However, it played out. Maybe the interest wasn't there at all on the Bruins side, but or maybe they were not willing to offer anything more than what Seattle did. So I think we got some comments from Rangers fans like, oh, that's a bad deal for the Rangers. Well, they got an even worse deal.
Yeah, and as it relates to the Bruins, like I said it last pod, and I'm still there. Like, you don't have to decide anything on Trent Frederick or any other player right now. Like, you can give this some time and see where it goes, and see what position you're in, see if anything changes on the contract talks front. And like, yeah, listen, if someone wants to come in and blow me away and like, offer first round pick plus for Frederick, or, something like the Tanner Jeannot deal where Tampa just like dramatically overpaid Nashville for Jeannot, like, okay, now you have my attention. But short of that, like, I feel no rush, no pressure at all to like be, going down the road of trading Trent Frederick right now.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because I think Frederick and Coyle aren't going anywhere this year. Like, I would be, obviously Frederick would be easier to move than Coyle for a couple different reasons, but I'm just going to go under the assumption that they're going to be here all year. So with that in mind, what would you guys say your confidence level is in those two players getting back to where they should be? And maybe your confidence percentage is different for each guy, but let's assume that they're here all year. The Bruins need them to get going at one point. How do you guys feel about them right now? I know it's it's not early in the year, it's mid-season, but are you confident in them or are you not?
I'm more confident that Swayman will get back to where he needs to be than those guys, I think. And I feel like if Coyle is injured, it's hard to say like you're confident about it. I don't know, Scott. Like, I don't have super high confidence in it. I don't know why. Just probably sample size has been big enough, but it just takes a hot stretch like to get confidence up, and some other guys in the Bruins have been doing it right now, so maybe it's just their turn is coming eventually. But I don't know. I haven't been high on it though. Like I don't even like saying that, but my confidence level isn't super high.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, mostly because I haven't really seen like a great reason to think that it's about to turn. That said, I do think it could be a 2-for-1 deal where they get going because they're playing together and have been together on that third line for a while now. Like, I think one gets going, the other gets going. Like, I could definitely see that where, all right, if Coyle starts playing, starts kind of taking over shifts the way he's capable of, that lifts up Frederic. It creates more chances for Frederic. It gets him more involved. Or vice versa, Frederic's getting in more on the forecheck and turning, creating turnovers and freeing pucks up with physicality. Like, now Coyle has more opportunity to have the puck on his stick. So I do kind of tie them together because they are together and they've played together so much that like we know what it looks like when they're going well and working off each other. So like I guess that would be, the optimistic side for me is like they might both go at once where it just takes, a couple good games and all of a sudden you're like, hey, wow, look, Coyle and Frederic each have 5 points the last 5 games. And, and now they're off and running. Whereas right now, instead, it's like they're both kind of just holding each other back because neither one's really going at the level they should be.
Well, if they do get going, guys, I feel like the addition of Wahlstrom could be a big reason for that. And I know it's a super small sample size, and I know the Islanders waived him for a reason. He's a young player, he's inconsistent, and he still has a lot to prove. But I'm just going to go off of what I saw last night in Edmonton, and I did not expect him to be that rangy, that physical, that defensively aware, and that impactful on the forecheck. And we know he has good hands. If you guys haven't seen it, the mini one-on-one clip when he was a kid,
everyone's seen it like 10 times.
That is the most insufferable video I think on the internet now. But he has a good shot.
The first time, but
he's got good offensive attributes. What I was pleasantly surprised was to see his intangibles elsewhere, and I think that he's a player that if he can play like he did in Edmonton most nights, he's going to create opportunities because he can make plays happen. And for Frederic and Coyle, who aren't exactly play starters, like they don't always make things happen just by themselves. They're kind of like a product of their line as a whole. Like, I think Taylor Hall gave those guys a lot of opportunities when he was on a line with them to be offensive. If Oliver Wahlstrom can win some puck battles and find Coyle in the slot with his good passing, or find Frederic in front of them, like, I think that can help them. Mark Kaslik, we said, was a good match with those guys because he would drag them into the fight. I think Oliver Wahlstrom is a good fit with them because I think he can make crafty plays in tight areas that hopefully can put Coyle and Frederick in positions to succeed. Like I thought Wahlstrom did that last night. Those guys just didn't execute on their end, but maybe they can do it going forward. So we'll have to wait and see there.
Yeah, they're not back. Well, they're finally back in Boston. They're playing Saturday against Buffalo. They have 2 games before Christmas at home. And Wahlstrom, I heard this on the broadcast. I guess his sister lives in Boston, and he was saying like his family, so many members of his family and friends are gonna be there if he's in the lineup, that he's like, I'm gonna play for free that day because obviously on debut nights, like the guys shell out all this money for anybody who wants to come watch. So he'll probably have a pretty full section rooting for him in Boston for the first time, which should be interesting. I don't see any reason why he would be out of the lineup unless they want to get Koepke right back in there, but they could still switch someone else out on the 4th line if they want to get Koepke back in. But either way, he'll probably make his Boston debut here either on the 21st or the 23rd, which are their 2 games before the break. I don't see a reason to switch him out, but yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely keep the same exact lineup. That ties in. I just had like a few just quick hit notes here. So yeah, Buffalo coming in on Saturday. As of Friday, an 11-game losing streak for the Sabres. Could be 12. They're playing Toronto Friday night. Just another year of absolute misery for that franchise. Started with some hope, quickly gone by Christmas. Elsewhere in the division, how about Linus Ullmark and the Ottawa Senators and the run they've been on to get into playoff position? Senators and Bruins are the 2 wildcard teams right now if you go on points percentage. And Ullmark, after a slow start in Ottawa, is now his last 9 games 8-0-1 with a .954 save percentage. Has been lights out, playing like the best goalie in the NHL right now.
Which he has been, and over the past few years, he's had those stretches where he has been. I mean, obviously, he won the Vezina 2 years ago, and yeah, I think that also makes the Swayman stuff even more, interesting. I don't even know if interesting is the right word, but
yeah,
the dynamic of it.
Maybe it'll get them going because they just copy each other. They copied each other's contracts. Maybe they copied each other's slow starts.
Well, is he going to copy getting traded to Ottawa?
Yeah, and then my very last note is World Junior Championships start next week. One of my favorite tournaments. Unfortunately, as it relates to Bruins side of things, 0 Bruins prospects playing in the tournament this year. Chris Pelosi had a chance at the U.S. He was one of the final cuts on Thursday. I thought he might win the 4th line center job, but ends up just getting left out. So I will be watching regardless, but unfortunately nothing for us to talk about from a Bruins perspective.
Yeah, no, I love World Juniors. A lot of college players to follow. If you're a BC fan, BU fan, you can watch Team USA and have plenty of guys that you recognize on that roster. BC has 6, BU has 3, and some of the Bruins prospects aged out. Like it's 20 or it's under 20, so. Yeah, he was the only one. Pelosi was the only one really left that could have made it, but like some of their prospects just are now too old to play in the juniors tournament. So I'm excited. I think USA. So do you know that USA has never won back-to-back golds?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I have heard that.
So
are they the favorite, or are they the favorite, or is Canada the favorite technically?
To be honest with you, it depends who you ask. Like, US is going to have another really great team. That the BC line is this year. It's Leonard is back and Perreault is back, and now they have Teddy Stiga, and they have they have just like
James Hagen centering that line.
James
potential
Hagen,
number 1 overall pick.
They have Mededian, they have some really solid, and then like if you look outside of Hockey East too, like Zeev Bouillon's a really good defenseman. They have, I think they're goaltending, they're favored. Like, they have probably the best goalie situation. That's maybe where they're better than Canada.
Yeah, same as the Four Nations coming up in February. Canada, for whatever reason, like doesn't develop goaltending anymore.
Okay, so Bridget, Scott, we have the Bruins versus the Sabres, as Bridget mentioned, and you guys have both mentioned. And look, that's one of those games where you got a struggling team. So the Bruins know Buffalo's struggling, but the Bruins are coming off of a long Western road trip, an opportunity for travel plus a weaker opponent for there to be a letdown. Cannot happen. You cannot let this game be anything other than 2 points, especially when you're battling on points percentage for playoff positioning. I get it. It's December. Doesn't matter. These are points you have to bank. And then you have the Capitals on Monday, who are playing great this year. So, like, an opportunity for the Bruins to get 4 points once against a struggling team, another 2 points against one of the better teams so far this year. As far as the Skate Pod recording, should we hold off and drop a early morning Christmas Eve episode recapping both games, or maybe we recap the Buffalo game, drop it Monday? I know I'm kind of talking about this live on the air, but might as well figure it out all together.
Yeah, people love schedule talk. You guys know me. I'm good for either. I would love there's no better way to spend Christmas Eve than starting the day recording with you guys. So okay. I would love that.
All right, maybe we do that. We record.
He's just
as
trying
much
to get
as
an extra gift or something. Did you guys get me anything? Did you guys get me anything this year?
Yeah, I actually got to check. It's
gonna have to tune in on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see.
Okay, so
we'll Photoshop for Scott this year. That's
our Christmas gift to everybody. We'll try to recap as many games as we can before Christmas. So maybe look for the next episode on Tuesday morning. But in the meantime, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.